Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us for the HEALTHSPAN Lab. I am Madina Estephan, and today we are going to discuss a really hot topic about the resilience. As we all know, last few months, the healthcare professionals all over the world are struggling with really unprecedented pandemic. And in front of sometimes uncontrolled situations or disease, we are still learning the resilience concept is making more and more attention, especially for the healthcare professionals. And my absolute pleasure today is to present our guest speaker. I'm delighted to be able to talk and discuss with her around this topic, which is her expertise, Dr. Nathalie Rapoport-Hubschman, who is as well psychotherapist and author of several books. So she will be presenting herself in a couple of minutes. Nathalie, the floor is yours. And once again, thank you very much for joining us today for the HEALTHSPAN Lab.
Thank you, Medina, and thank you very much for inviting me. So it's a pleasure really to be here today and to have the opportunity with you and with people we have maybe on the social media to have a look on the pandemic and also on the concept of resilience and how it's related to stress, which is my expertise. So as you said, I'm a physician. I was trained in medicine in France, and I was trained also in psychology and psychotherapy. And I was lucky to train also in the US and Israel. I've spent time at the Stress and Health Lab at Stanford University doing research. And my other professional experience in the US was in Boston at the Benson Henry Institute for Mind-Body Medicine. We'll talk about that place later, I think, in our talk, because I was there and was very happy to contribute to the manualization of the program that has been running for a few decades and that has impressive results. And I was in Israel for many years, and I have been the director of the medical psychology department at the Rabin Medical Center. So I've worked for many years now with patients, health professionals, organizations, and I'm back in France, in Paris. I've been back for 7 years now, having a clinical practice and teaching and training health professionals, groups, patients and organizations. So as you said, my focus is mind-body medicine as a whole. I'm doing psychotherapy, but I'm mostly interested in the relationship between, our mind, our body, and stress and resilience is my topic, and it's an especially hot topic. It has always been, but I think that, as you said, the pandemic has made it even more salient. So it's a pleasure to be here talking about that.
Thank you, Nathalie, and that's great to have you here today to talk about the concept, which is, at my point, is absolutely transdisciplinary and was emerged because of the multidisciplinarity. That's the difficulty of also to define what is really resilience is, because we're using this concept in many disciplines like physics or in IT systems and also in human science. So from your point of view, what is the definition of resilience at individual and organizational level?
Well, actually, the term comes like the stress term. It comes from physics. And in physics, as in psychology or in human science, it is the ability to go back to an equilibrium, to a state where you've been, to rebound, and sometimes even to grow when you are able to learn from adversity. So it's a very important term, and as you said, it's been used in very different disciplines. So it's actually a very helpful term, and we all actually can learn to be more resilient, because as we will probably discuss, resilience is not something you're born with. It can be, some people are more or less resilient, but the good thing is that resilience is a skill, so it's something that we can all learn and develop.
And why it will be so important, this concept in healthcare, especially with COVID crisis, in front of so many challenges we're facing actually.
Yes, you said it in your introduction. Resilience has always been important, you know, for our patients, for health professionals, and it was especially important in the recent times because it was a time of very high stress. And we all know that even as individuals or as health professionals, it was such an unexpected, unpredicted, uncertain, unprevisible situation that it was extremely difficult to make sense of it and to know how to control it. So it disrupted actually all the way we knew, all what was familiar to us. So going back to an equilibrium was especially difficult. It is still difficult in many places in the world. That's why we all can try to understand more and try to adopt the guidelines that can make us resilient, us as individuals and us as organizations as well, of course.
So when we look at the current situation, it's definitely stressogenic situation, where, as you said, uncontrolled, unpredictable, new, because we are still learning, and where the big threat of the ego somewhere, because there's a direct threat to the health, and healthcare professionals are ones who are more exposed. All right. So the resilience existed. How I will add a question about historically where it comes from, this concept, and how long we have been studied it.
Well, it has been studied for a while now in psychology, and it's a central concept in positive psychology also, because as you may know, psychology has focused on the negative side of the human mind for decades until the end of the 90s. And in the 90s, actually, there was a switch, and the question was, how can we understand and how can we help human beings not only suffer less, but also thrive, develop, and grow and live better lives? So the whole concept of resilience is ingrained in this field of positive psychology. So it has always been here, and the development of the discipline makes it even more precise now. We have theoretical definitions, but I think it's even more important to know that we now have validated approaches that can help anyone be more resilient. So it's an old concept, but it's a very new, we have very new approaches that have been tested. So we can be kind of confident that we know how to help people be more resilient.
So what do you mean that resilience from theoretical discipline is becoming more and more practical, right?
Yes, yes,
with,
exactly.
With concrete tools and validated tools scientifically, which has. So there's another concept which is intimately linked, and where you have mentioned it. I mean, when we talk about the stress and stressful situations, stress against, So it's the first thing we're coming up here is kind of how we can face adversity, and that resilience is a concept which is linked to this one. How they are linked, by which way? Can you explain us a little bit, please?
Yes, so stress is an kind of an old concept too. It started in, at the end of the 19th century, and when researchers and neurophysiologists worked on how the body equilibrium was modified by different type of experience. When we talk about human beings, we are speaking, as you were, about adversity. And so stress is our reaction to something that we see as a threat. So it can be an external threat. It can be an internal threat because we are very good at creating our own stresses. So we don't always need the environment in order to be stressed. That's an important point. And as I said, it's what we perceive as a threat. It means that in order to be stressful, we have to think we don't have the resources to cope with the situation. If we think we're able to cope with the situation, so, well, we can be disturbed, but the stress will not be as powerful. So it's both a psychological and a physiological concept. And in my view, it's extremely important because, and that's the link with resilience, I think. When I'm talking about resilience, I think we can't let one of these dimensions aside. Resilience has to be also, mental resilience, emotional resilience, and physical resilience. We will have, I'm sure, time to discuss that later. But if we don't understand the stress reaction, I mean, how it affects us, how it affects our thoughts, we are thinking, I won't be able to do this. I'm such an incapable person. To understand our emotions and to understand what happens in our body, because the stress reaction happens in the body, then we won't be able to manage stress better. And same thing for resilience. I mean, we need to have the whole picture in order to have a whole resilience. So I hope that I could explain the link between stress and resilience a little bit better.
Absolutely. And what I hear is also that resilience is a part of our coping strategy, or it's one of the coping strategy, or it's something which you need in any type of adaptive coping strategy.
Well, resilience is something we should aim towards. I mean, we all want to be resilient. To be resilient is, to be able to go back to normal, or even if it's a new normal like we have now, or even, as I said, to learn from what happened to us, even if it's grief, trauma, loss. And sometimes, we can even grow after trauma, after stressful events. We have the concept of post-traumatic growth. It means being able to understand, to cope, to adjust, and to thrive, finding meaning in a way in what happened to us, and in what we can do to go away from the stress and the grief.
And it means also to better understand emotional background, what's going on with emotional aspects during the stress reactions, right?
Yes, yes.
That's what I heard.
Yes, exactly. You're totally on. I mean, as I said, the stress has an impact on us. Actually, stress is at the same time what stresses us, the stressor, and our reaction, the stress reaction. And the stress reaction implies different dimensions. When we are stressed, as we all know, we feel certain things. We feel our hearts racing. We may have trouble breathing. We can have, you know, stomach ache or muscle tension. We generally tend to think negative thoughts when we are stressed. As I said, we call them negative automatic thought because we don't invite them, they happen. And generally, we tend to think things, it won't work out, I won't be able to, why is this happening to me? And we also have a lot of emotional reaction to stress. We can be sad, we can be full of anger, we can be frustrated. So there's a whole range of emotions that happen when we are stressed. So knowing, understanding what happens to us, and having the ability to understand, to sometimes switch towards a more positive perspective in terms of our thoughts, in terms of our emotions, and in terms of our physical reaction also to stress. So all this contributes greatly to our resilience, of course.
Nathalie, excuse me my naivety, but can we consider resilience as a kind of golden standard of coping, adaptive coping?
Well, it's a good question, you know, because I wouldn't say it's a way of coping. I didn't see it like that, but in a sense, it's true. If you have a resilient type of coping, then yes, it's a way of coping for sure. But
and
I
why it
think
would be so
it.
important? Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. As I said, I
And
think.
if we accept it,
Go ahead. Sorry.
it's fine. If we will accept it as a coping, as a golden standards of coping, why it's so important, especially in healthcare professionals? Do they have different type of emotions emerging, or, I mean, some particular maybe strong emotions emerging?
Well, I love your question because, you know, I think that there is something that's a big paradox. In healthcare, we are trained to take care of human beings. And most of the time, we forget, both as an individual as organization, that we are human beings ourselves. I mean, that we have, that we can be stressed, that we have emotions. And this whole dimension is especially important to take good care of our patients. And it's especially important for the patients to be heard, to be taken care of, to be satisfied. And it's also important, of course, for ourselves. Otherwise, you know, we know the complexity of the healthcare system everywhere in the world, actually, because I was lucky enough to work in different healthcare systems in different parts of the world. I can tell you that even if there's cultural differences, the complexity is similar everywhere. And so I would say, of course, not. Of course, no, the healthcare professionals are not different human beings. They have been trained um, to take care of others. They frequently have a kind of calling towards taking care of others, and sometime in the process, I won't say that they forget their callings, but they learn, in order to cope better and not to be stressed too much and not to suffer too much, to put their emotions, you know, underneath and under the carpet, I would say. So that doesn't make health professionals different type of human beings, but they may have different type of coping styles, and helping them being more resilient is exactly bringing back the human side of the health professional and integrating it into their practice.
Understand. And we're talking a lot about burnout in healthcare, which is itself, the term of burnout is quite huge, and we have different degree of burnout with different stages of clinical manifestation of the burnout. So perhaps there is some lack of awareness of healthcare professionals how burnout is happening, why, and what is the first signs. So
yes,
just to link burnout and resilience, you just told me that, yes, right, it's a, let's educate them to understand their emotions, cope with them, and resilience will be a part of these skills. But at the same time, they probably have to understand also or need some kind of huge awareness about the burnout itself, why it's going to happen, and why they don't need to handle these emotions, like you said, putting them under the carpet or ignoring.
Yes, yes, sure. Yes, there's a huge burnout epidemic in the healthcare professionals among them. That's true everywhere in the world. There's a higher prevalence of burnout among physicians than among the general population. As you said, and as we said before, there are several definitions of burnout, so it's sometimes very difficult to know the exact prevalence, but it has been the case before the COVID pandemic, and it's even more the case now. You were talking about a study from Russia, and I've read recently a study about the US. Well, of course, you know, in a time like this, there is more stress, there's more anxiety, there's more depression. So the factors that are conducting to burnout are even more present than in real time. So we have to be especially vigilant, I would say, now. And in a way, I'm hopeful that this crisis will help us understand that we have to take into account the emotional needs of the general population, of course, because everybody is suffering now from anxiety, but of the people who are taking care of the population, I mean, the health professionals. So hopefully, and that's what happens sometimes in time, after a time of crisis, you know, crisis is both a threat and a change. So let's hope that it will be a good time to put resilience even more at the forefront of programs for healthcare professionals, and that it will change something into burnout prevention or awareness, emotional awareness for healthcare professionals. But it also has to start, you know, during the medical studies and to be repeated afterwards.
Yes, absolutely. And there is definitely gap and lack of educational programs targeting the preparation of the healthcare professionals for the future professional life, including the self-awareness, self-management, self-development, and preparation for development of different capacities like resilience. Do you think that the burnout occurs in people who have low resilience? And what would be the parameters influencing individual resilience in that case?
Well, I've just looked at the study before our talk, and it was very interesting because there's a link, of course, between burnout and resilience. But even if you're a very resilient person, you can be burned out. So, you know, it's not totally overlapping. And I think it makes sense because, you know, into the burnout, there's the individual factors, but there are also the systemic factors. I mean, we react to situations. We are individuals, we are human beings, we have our needs, our emotions, but sometimes we can try to be extremely resilient, but when we live in a totally absurd situation, or when we live with, we work with people who are harassing us, well, well, we can't be resilient in a productive way. So sometimes we just have, to get out of the situation. So I wouldn't want to put the burden only on the individual. And sometimes, the organization also has to understand, to take the lessons and to change in order to prevent burnout in its workforce. That's a very important point.
Absolutely. And when you are talking about that, I have my personal experience, which is absolutely confirming that going through the different situations, and I have changed several countries in my life as well, and several healthcare systems. I can only confirm that being resilient is not sufficient to be not burned out. And at the same time, there's some kind of parameters at the individual level, or let's say the human qualities or features which helps you to be more resilient. Which are those parameters? It's
Yes,
from your
yes,
standpoint.
for sure. Well, it starts with self-awareness. I mean, in order to be more resilient and to prevent chronic stress or burnout, we all have, and I think that should be something that starts early. At school we learn a lot of things at school, but we don't know what a human being is, and that's too bad. We should learn how our mind works. We should learn that our mind produces thoughts, but that our thoughts are not who we are. We sometimes have very, negative thoughts, but it does not reflect reality. So self-awareness, learning self-regulation, how to self-regulate, what to do with our emotions, what to do with our thoughts, how to calm our mind and our body. It's extremely important. Another central thing for me, and there's a lot of literature, scientific literature, that confirms that. Of course, I don't take it from my personal hat. I'm extracting this from, the whole scientific literature, is to learn to see the world, to understand that what we think is not exactly what happens, but we perceive reality with our own filters. And it's very important to know that the human mind has a way to see negative things more than positive things. There is built in the human mind what we call a negativity bias. And in order to see the world in a more realistic way, we have to use the flexibility of our mind, the neuroplasticity, and we can actually retrain our mind to take on more positive perspectives. And that's really something that is a skill. Of course, some people are born with, pink glasses, and some people are born with, I would say, more of black glasses, but it's something that can be changed. So it's very important to know that knowing how our mind works and knowing the different approaches that can help us, making the best of our mind is an excellent way to cope with stress, with adversity, to prevent burnout, and to be more resilient. And there are different approaches that can help us do that.
Do you mean that when you say burn with different type of glasses, really burn? I mean, genetically burn, or it's in the first months of the early childhood development and first years, those glasses became of different colors?
Well, there's a very interesting study on a very large population that tries to define our happiness capital. Um, and it says that approximately half of our well-being capital, quantity is comes from genetic. origin. I mean, it's half of it. But the circumstances of our life makes up 10% of what makes us happy. And the good news is that 40% of what makes us, satisfied with our life and happy comes from gratifying activities. I mean, that's what we can control. So yes, in a way, and that's what I was telling you, and that's exactly what you said. We are born with glasses that have a different color that makes up about half of our capacity, but we have 40% of our capacity that can be trained and changed. And 40%, I think it's a very optimistic message. We can make a lot with 40%. So people can change. And even if we are born, with gray glasses and we tend to see the world in a gray color, well, that's something, if we're aware of it and if we want to change, we can definitely change. So that makes us more happy, that improves our well-being for sure, and it makes us more resilient, definitely.
That's amazing. That's when you see your two children who are born in the same family and they have quite the same education, but one is always solution solution result driven, if we can say, and another one is the troublemaker. You will ask yourself, yes, definitely the 40% somewhere differently dispatched between them. But you told me, you said one thing very important, that we can develop some capacities like empathy or altruism or solidarity, those to other driven actions,
yes,
which make us more happier.
Yeah, sure. We call that pro-social behaviors.
Yes.
And that's totally something that we can work on. And it's extremely important to work on that, of course, for us as a society and for us as human beings, because making other happy or heard makes us generally more happy too. So there's a lot of work on empathy and compassion in the healthcare system, and we know how it's central. We know it, of course, in the context of the doctor-patient relationship. When you want to be a doctor, when you want to be a nurse, at the beginning, at least, you want to take good care of your patients. The problem is, as I said earlier, is that sometimes, more for physicians than for nurses, sadly, but sometimes it disappears in the process because in med school, we tend to be trained to focus on the disease and on what doesn't work in the human body. And in order to grasp the complexity of diseases, we sometimes tend to refrain to connect with the person. So we sometimes have to retrain physicians to be real beings, because we all have this capacity in ourselves. So being empathetic, being compassionate is so important in healthcare. It's important for patient satisfaction. It's important for healthcare quality, and it's important for our own well-being, of course, because we were talking about burnout previously. A lot of burnout ensues also when physicians lose the meaning of what they are doing. They are so constrained with time and computers and forums that they totally lose track of what they were looking for into healthcare. So getting this back into the doctor-patient relation and giving room to the human connection is extremely important. And as we said, that's something, even if we forget it, and it sometimes happens, we can learn it back and integrate it again in who we are and how we work and how we relate to others, to our patients or to our co-workers, for example.
Nathalie, you have mentioned absolutely important thing like it means that all is skills, so including empathy, compassion, resilience is a skill. And at the same time, to practice the skill, you need to have kind of tools, or put the words, put the gesture, put the emotions there. So why is it a skill? I mean, resilience is particularly, and how we can develop it.
Well, as we said, we can be born more or less resilient. That's a fact. But we can all learn to know ourselves better and to develop more resilience. And it's a skill because it's a competence that you can train, learn, and develop. You know, as I said, our mind, our brain can change. I mean, we are generally working on automatic pilot, you know. A lot of our mental activities happen, and we don't always control them. Sometimes it's for the best, you know, because it's kind of a shortcut, and it enables us to do a lot of things. For example, we are driving to a special place, we arrive and we realize that we were thinking of something else. We have totally lost track of the different roads or streets we were on. So it's sometimes good to be on automatic pilot. But when we are on automatic pilot for our negative emotions, for example, when we have the same type of negative patterns, you know, the same old thoughts, the same old scenarios that keep again and again coming back, the negative things we can say on ourselves: I'm not enough, I'm not good at this, I won't succeed, it won't work out, I won't find a partner, I'm not a good doctor. Well, you know, that's endless. So we can stop, actually, and we can learn that these thoughts are not who we are, or they are not a good reflection of the reality. And there are many approaches, mostly based on cognitive therapy, that can help us diffuse from our thoughts, take distance from the thoughts, take a different perspective, and see that thoughts are only thoughts. And that can help us, you know, modify our thoughts into something that's more positive, that's more, and I'm not talking about positive thinking as a solution. Sometimes reality is not positive, of course. So what I'm saying is that it doesn't need to be always negative. And our mind, in the end, is used to go directly towards what's not going right, towards the negative conclusion, the negative thoughts. And through learning, and most importantly, through practice, we can retrain our neurons, actually, to go slightly less towards the negative and more towards the positive. And when I say practice, I mean it, Madina. I mean, it's not sufficient to know that it can happen. These things happen through practice, because our mind is like a muscle. I mean, we wouldn't think that, you know, just thinking that we will go to the gym will make us fit. Of course, we know that we have to do some workout. And we tend to think that our mind is only an abstract thing. It's not. It's also working like a muscle. I mean, we can change our mind, but in order to change our mind, we have to practice different things, to practice thinking in a different way, to practice meditation, to practice positive perspective. I mean, there are lots of practice, and these practices work only when they are put into practice, of course.
Thank you, Nathalie. Yes, it's a muscle, but we need to feed this muscle, right? So can you tell us about your different approaches and training programs which you are designed toward the healthcare professionals.
Yeah, sure, with pleasure. Well, as I said, I had the privilege to work for 2 years in Boston at the Benson Henry Institute for Mind Body Medicine. And there is there a very nice person who is a cardiologist, Herbert Benson. He's been a pioneer into mind-body medicine. He's been working on stress at the beginning, and you know, the white coat effect, how stress can impact blood pressure. It's something that now seems so evident, but at the time when he started to research the thing at Harvard, you know, he was thought of as a kind of people coming from the moon, because it was impossible to think at that time that our thoughts, our emotions could have an impact on our physiology. So he is really a pioneer, and along the years, he and the team working with him have designed a program which is now called the SMART program, Stress Management and Resiliency Training. I think the program, and I know several approaches. I've been trained in a lot of different approaches in psychotherapy, meditation, and positive psychology. What I like about this program is how powerful it is. I mean, it integrates different type of meditation, and as you know, meditation is a mind training. It's an attentional training. I mean, it helps us redirect our thoughts and calm our mind and our body, and at the same time it uses cognitive approaches and positive psychology to help us distance from the negativity bias and focus more on, you know, the small or big things that happen in our lives and that can be positive. Because I like this metaphor actually, and I use it a lot with my patients and my trainees. There is a kind of Velcro and Teflon effect in our mind. You know, the negative sticks to our mind like Velcro, and the positive slides on our mind like Teflon. So in order to find a new equilibrium, we have, as we said previously, we have to work hard and to practice. So being able to provide very concrete tools, helping people to meditate, to train them in different meditation approaches, helping them understand their minds, I mean, their thoughts, processes, their emotions, what's happening in their bodies, to accept in a way who they are and to grow from there, is sometimes something that could take years. I mean, some people are in therapy for years and they understand themselves better, but they don't always exceed this level of resilience that we were talking about. So what I think is so important is to have kind of a built-in program where you can take people at some point and in a few weeks
and continue.
Get them to another point where they will be much better. So that's something that we do with the SMART program. It's very teachable. It's something that can be done in a group. I'm doing that, you know, with patients, because it's the good thing with it is it's open to anybody. At the beginning, it was for patients with chronic illnesses, because it's very helpful working on the stress and the physiology of stress. So, of course, it's very helpful for all the stress-related disorders. But what's even more important is that we all can benefit from the trainings and from the approaches and from the practices, as I said, that are in a program like the SMART program, the resiliency program. That's, as I said, extremely powerful. So that's the program I would recommend. There are others, of course, and actually I'm very excited because I've been working with the team for many years now, and it's the first year that I can propose the program in French. So finally in France, we can use the SMART with this wonderful blend of meditation and positive psychology. And that's a huge achievement, and it makes me, you know, very happy to be able to import, I would say, this program into our old Europe. So that's one of the a program I think that works very well with resilience. Of course, there are other programs, but as I said, I think that in order to get a whole and a global resilience, you really have to work with different dimensions. I mean, your thoughts, your emotions, and your body. If you leave out one of the dimensions, then you leave out the whole resilience thing, because resilience has to be mental, emotional, and body resilience, of course, also.
Nathalie, thank you very much, and I'm really happy to hear it, and I would like to congratulate you for this achievement, knowing how is old Europe can be resistant for new changes. And actually completely agree, it's a 360 approach with all different dimensions. I'm particularly interested in those programs, and that in Sensemakers we are developing and having other programs as well. And there is another dimension which is not missing but intrinsically linked to the body, mind, and spirit, which is for me is the communication.
Yes.
Because to express yourself after being very mindful, very thoughtful and positive, and calm and open to new challenges and resilient, you have to manage somewhere and be the master of the words. So, and this, I think, the dimension which is also missing in some medical schools or in the parcours, in the whole educational system of the future healthcare professionals. So
yeah, I just want to add, Medina, you're absolutely right, and I didn't mention it, but it's part, of course, of the program or of programs that are working. I mean, our relationship to others and how we relate to others and how we talk to others cannot be left out. It's a part of our humanity and of our in the world, and to be happy and resilient in the world. So I totally agree with you. So I didn't talk about that, but you're right. I should have.
thank you, Nathalie. Thank you. And for the future advice to individuals and organizations to cope effectively with complexity, variable conditions, and stressful environments, what would you advise? What will be your key messages or killer? Yes, key messages actually.
Well, I think I can't emphasize enough what we have already said, and it's important to say it again. I mean, we cannot be resilient if we are not aware of who we are, and that's right for us as individuals, but I think it's the same for organizations. I mean, in a way, we can draw a parallel between how we work as individuals and what where we should focus and where we should focus as organizations. I mean, to be self-aware, it's important for a person, and it's important for an organization to be able to self-regulate, to know, as we said, our thoughts, emotions, physical reaction, how we relate to others, and who is in our social support system is extremely important. So in a way, I think that my advice would be very similar at the individual level and at the organizational level, because in a way, the awareness, the importance of the awareness of being open to who we are, to being open to how we relate to the world, to others, and to ourselves, is as important for us as human beings as it is for an organization. You know, if an organization wants to be more resilient, it also have to hear what the members have to say, to be aware of how it reacts, and to be able to find a way to self-regulate, and to put, as I said, and I think it's something that I see as extremely important, to find an equilibrium between the negative sides and the positive sides. As I said about the negativity bias that is built in our mind, and the way we can, through practice, see the world through different lenses, and see how a lot of positive things happen, even in the midst of a pandemic. I mean, we see the smile of our children, we see the sun in the sky, I see you when we have a nice chat. All these things are big or small things, so our ability to relate to what is and to see what's positive in our lives, it's something that keep us well, that help us stay resilient, and that can even make us, you know, happy or happier. So that's, in a way, in a nutshell, I would say, what would be my advice to individuals and to organizations as well.
I have to say that in the ideal world, I would like to everybody to be able to have those educational programs and come and be able to benefit from the experts like you. In reality, organizations are still far away from understanding the necessity of having not only the programs, but having staff and psychologists and dedicated staff within the structure. So, and when I'm saying it, I'm thinking especially about Russia, where we have a lot of barriers still to overcome to be able to tend towards the organization's human-oriented, and especially in healthcare. Hopefully making awareness and talking about that and saying that there are solutions, and guys, you are not alone, will help also understand healthcare professionals that they can be a game changer.
Yes, yes, for sure, for sure. And, you know, making the link with what you said about burnout in Russia, and what I want to say, it's maybe because I'm an optimistic person, so I see the opportunity where it's not always, but sometimes we need to get to a higher rate of suffering and of burnout in order to be able, you know, to understand that things have to change. And actually, I think, and that's something that we haven't talked about, but it's a very important point, there's a business case for resilience. I mean, it's not only, you know, that we want everybody to be happy, but in organizations, be it in healthcare or elsewhere, having happy might sound corny, but it's not. Having satisfied people who are working is actually a benefit in terms not only of atmosphere, but also in terms of cost. We know that definitely in the healthcare system. I mean, there's been a whole bunch of studies that can show the business case for well-being of the healthcare professionals. So I'm sure that in Russia, it can maybe also help, you know, the situation change. Because as you said, organizations don't want, or it's not their goal, of course, to make their workers happy. But when they understand that they can have a financial interest into making them, you know, not burned out, using prevention and having satisfied workers, well, at this point things need change. So let's hope that in a way it will work out.
Somewhere we're touching now the corporation culture. I mean, the culture of not only well-being, but also resilient being. Let me tell you that that was my big wish when I left the big corporate company and started my own business within the partnership with Sensemakers, sorry, and HEALTHSPAN also, because we're targeting the health span of organizations. That was my wish, to develop as much as possible this well-being culture within the organizations, and first of all in healthcare systems, because if you don't start from yourself, of caring yourself, you can't be so effective in caring for others.
Yes, yes.
Right.
That's correct. That's correct. So I totally agree. And again, I think that we tend to leave these business aspects, you know, aside, but I've been using them sometimes in order to try to make things change, because, you know, you have to talk the language of the people you're talking to. So sometimes, you know, making the case that, you know, it's interesting also in terms of businesses. If you're an HMO, or if you're a hospital, or if you're anything, corporation, well, having happy and resilient workers is not only good for them, it's also good for you. So that may be something that we could use, you know, in order to help the world change faster.
Completely agree. The health of the workers is a capital of the organization that can be resumed like that.
Exactly.
So thank you very much, Nathalie. We're coming to the end of this live talk, and I would like to continue these passionate discussions with you, and hope that we will have another opportunity to meet each other. I should say that yesterday I bought your book, absolutely amazing book about the invisible barriers in women, and now reading it, and honestly, at the beginning I saw that there is a lot of answers which I were looking for a while. So.
Okay, I'm very happy. I'm writing a third book. It will be about resilience this time. So, you know, we are right on topic. So thank you again for inviting me, Madina. It was a pleasure to talk with you about that.
Welcome, and hope with the launch of the book we will do another point of what is resilient about, and you will have probably more outcomes from your healthcare groups to share with that.
Yes, I'll be very happy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So
have a nice evening. Bye bye. Take care.